Good afternoon. My name is Maureen McCarthy, and I am the session facilitator for our next session, which is entitled COVID-19 in Indian Country, Challenges and Innovations. And I have three excellent speakers here who are going to be talking to you about some of the things that have really shown COVID to be a threat multiplier in Indian country, and explain not only what the challenges are, but some very creative things that we are doing in Indian country to address this situation. So we welcome you to this session, and we look forward to our very interesting Q&A following this discussion. So with that, I'm going to open up with the first question, which is really, I'm going to ask to both James and Vicki, and I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves as you start speaking. What were the biggest impacts that COVID had on your communities? And what were the underlying conditions that really made COVID a substantial challenge for your communities? So with that, I'm going to start with James, please.
Let me begin by saying, how Habidakiapi Chante Washington Napeju Zapalo, James Rattling Machapi now, Shichango Lakota Oyate Mataha. Greetings, and my name is James Rattling. I'm from the Rosebud Sioux tribe, and I greet you with a good heart and handshake. The question, I think it's a very important question, is really understanding the impact of COVID on, in particular, my tribe, the Rosebud Sioux tribe. And I would say at least three things I want to talk about today in our time. First is the cultural impacts. I think COVID, because of the lockdown and because of the isolation, it's really impacted our cultural practices. You know, we are a very social group. We depend on each other for things that help us sustain our culture and our spirituality. So that's number one. I think the number two is economics. You know, on Rosebud Sioux tribe, we have high unemployment rate, still struggle with poverty issues. And so because of the shutdown, the lockdowns, and those kind of things, really impacted our tribal government. So when your tribal government is the largest employer on the reservation, obviously when people can't work or there's impacts to that, you know, that hurts our people. I think the other big employer was our casino. And because of our casino shut down and because the customers were discouraged from coming, obviously that really impacted our employees, but also the revenue that the tribe depends on for social services and education and things that really matter to us. Finally, I would say sort of the mental. I think that the impact on our youth, when we have a shutdown, we have isolation. Our youth cannot really gather normally what they normally do in terms of the school. The schools play a very important role in the social fabric of our community. So when students cannot come to school for education, for lunch, and that social support, obviously that's a big impact. So so we just have to understand that those are, at least from my perspective, them are three things that that I think about in terms of how leadership is communicating those things to me.
Excellent, James. Thank you so much for that insight. Vicki, please.
Greetings from the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation. I am in central South Dakota, right on the Cheyenne River. My husband and I raise bucking horses and cattle, and then I've worked in Indian country for the last 22 years, 23, for Indian ag producers. So Maureen, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this panel. I'm very much like James. This has affected and rocked our communities and our reservation as a whole. I kind of identified a couple of things. Again, the mental, same as James, across the board, whether you're a youth, an elder, or you're just us. It's been very hard not to have that social connection. On tribes, you know, for all tribes, our center is around social activities. And so not being able to do that has been mentally trying. We have funerals online right now. And traditionally for our people, funerals last 2 days, and including an all-night wake where you tell stories and celebrate the person and then go into the funeral. So it's been very difficult. Where I'm from, we're having funerals outside on ranches and people are just distancing in cars just to show respect. because respect is such a huge part of our culture. I think the second most devastating thing is one that James brought up, but a little bit more for us as well. But we have kids that can't go to school, have no resources for Wi-Fi, or if they do, it's very limited. We do have great Wi-Fi here. Our tribe has done a grant years ago, so we do have fiber optics, but that doesn't mean everyone has it. So we also have kids that relied on meals every day, and they were the only 2 meals that they would get when they would get to school. They would get breakfast and lunch. You know, part of what they've done is tried to deliver some of that. But, you know, for these kids that are challenged, you know, are being challenged to do school at home, it's really luck of the draw for these kids. If you have good parents and you have a good, or grandparents or aunties and uncles, you know, and you have people that are willing to make sure you get your stuff done, those kids are doing okay. But we have a lot that aren't. I live in Ziebach County, and for the last probably 5 years running, we've either been the poorest county in the nation or the top 3. So you can imagine the challenges that these kids face. So also for us, the challenge is resources. We all, almost as tribes, live in food deserts. So when we can't move about to get food, you know, our grocery stores are having trouble keeping up with that. When I say we aren't able to move about, my chairman, Harold Fraser, has shut down our borders, and everyone is checked through. It's for traceability. We're not trying to control anyone. We're trying to be able to trace the virus if somebody gets it. You may have heard, you know, in the news media, we've had a little bit of resistance from our officials on this, but we have held strong and we know our treaty rights, and we know what we are entitled to do through those treaty rights. We do have a major highway going through our reservation, which has been the focus of the contention of our borders. The other thing, I'm a producer, as I said before, and so we are really struggling with our markets right now. Whether you're a farmer or a rancher, you know, cattle prices are down. If they go up, it's just very small. Same thing for soybeans, corn, everything that makes this country go round is struggling right now because of COVID. Because if you can't get something to where it needs to go, you know, the system fails and breaks down. So, and then, you know, elections haven't helped either. So, I mean, you know, that always affects our markets. You know, right now, the unsureness of what's going to happen. And so, you know, as producers, we're super worried. We're having major mental breakdowns from our producers, because what are you going to do if you can't make your payments, if you can't make your lease payment? Our systems on tribes, or at least mine, is that you have a lease, and some of it's tribal ground and some of it is managed by BEIA. And there's only so many leases on a tribe. So if you lose your lease, you lose your livelihood. So it's a very, very, and one that is very taxing on, you know, all of our producers. There's no one that's just going to get through scotch-free on this deal because our cattle prices are so low. Our cattle prices. We're in the heavier season. There are some fall calvers, but we're in the heavier season for selling calves right now. So this is what we're going through. And so, yeah, it's very much difficult to try and maneuver all of that amid people getting the virus and suffering from the effects of it and bouncing back. Because even after you bounce back, I mean, it's a difficult thing. So, yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Thank you, Vicki. I really appreciate that. And I know this is personal for you, so thank you for sharing your thoughts. Kyle, bring us to the concurrent emergencies of both climate and COVID.
Right. Hi, everyone. I'm Kyle Bocinsky. I'm the director of the Research Institute at Crow Canyon, and I'm a researcher with the Montana Climate Office. And Maureen was right. There's multiple crises that are affecting Indian country and producers all across the West. This summer was one of the driest and warmest on record for Arizona and Utah. We're having a historic another historic drought in the Southwest that is at this point being exaggerated by an incoming La Nina weather pattern that suggests that the drought is going to continue through the winter of 2020 into the spring of 2021. And this has had major impacts on communities across the Southwest. The normal ways in which people would deal with drought and food insecurity that comes from drought would be through the markets, through exchange, through reaching out to other communities, and as we were just hearing from Vicky, because of the COVID pandemic, what we have is borders that are shut down, less flow of goods and relief into communities, and a real challenge. At the same time, we're having we've had a really bad wildfire season across the West and across the Southwest, at concurrent with a pandemic that affects a disease that affects people's lungs, and so we're having bad air quality, or we had bad air quality throughout the summer, and we're really concerned about another large fire season next year should La Nina patterns continue drought in the Southwest. This is all happening in the context of climate, human-induced climate change. That is where we're seeing droughts and wildfire seasons increasing in frequency, duration, and intensity over the last century, and certainly in the last couple of decades. Along with that comes all sorts of secondary and tertiary impacts, including noxious weeds, locusts, and other pests that come along with drought. Health and wellness impacts, elders being in hot houses and not being able to escape the heat, mental health impacts in the agricultural community and other communities from food insecurity and drought impacts, and not helped by the fact that we have inadequate drought and weather monitoring networks across large portions of the West, including on tribal land. So we really have in the Southwest and across the West this dual crisis of drought and COVID that are hitting at the same time and causing major problems for people.
Deep breath. Okay. So we've laid out the challenges, and for the NCSE community and our participants, what are some of the positive things that we've been able to do in Indian country? And Vicky, I'm going to start with you. I'm just going to give you 2 minutes, if you would, to just give us a short overview of some of the things that you've been involved in, and then I'm going to move to James, and then we'll close out with Kyle sort of bringing it together with the concurrent emergencies we're dealing with. So with that, Vicky, please.
Perfect. So I think that the quickest reaction that we had was from our Native Waters on Arid Lands group. We initiated a working group, and we have calls every Friday. And immediately we addressed some issues that were happening at Navajo and Hopi. They had no water, they had no wood, because if you remember, this was, over a year ago in March, and it was still cold down there, and they really rely on that wood. So we connected, and it really kind of speaks to what this group is about. It's about connecting the dots, creating opportunities for tribes where they have a need, and we can fill that and help them out. So we have a great group with over probably close to 40 people every single Friday that are meeting, and we're just covering a variety of issues. One of the most important right now is food sovereignty. It's been so important for tribes, and this has been an issue that's been looming out there and that had taken up some, good speed of getting addressed. But with COVID, it came full force. We have packing houses that are out a year. So, I think it's important that we continue to address those and help tribes become sovereign in their food deserts and start, being able to be self-sufficient and feed their people. I also, we talked about earlier, my chairman shutting down our borders. One of the things my chairman does every single day is gets on the radio and reports the numbers and takes questions from our people. And that's been extremely helpful because they don't, edit the questions. They're very raw. They're very difficult. The poor guy gets raked over the coals every day. Every once in a while he gets a shout out, but he's doing really good. And he knows what he's trying to do. And at the end of the day, that's to protect his people. And that's all you can do right now. Our numbers are rising as well as South Dakota's. Right now we're the #1 hotspot in the nation. So, it's frustrating to be trying to help and you have forces working against you. I think that as we move forward, I hope that we have people that are more mindful of this, and that as a state, whether we have the support at a higher level, that people just start wearing their masks. And it's very important. These deaths are rocking our communities. They're very important people. In our culture, our elders are the most important. They're the #1 respected person in our culture. And so as they're dying, it's a huge for our people. Not only that, but a lot of these elders are raising these kids. So it's very, very devastating.
Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. James, could you give us some insight of some innovative actions?
Well, first, I think, my background, my work deals a lot with data science, data analytics. And I just sort of want to share that the COVID has really exposed or demonstrated the vulnerability of our tribe when it comes to looking at its infrastructure, when it comes to how to share information and how our people are ready or not ready to receive that information, whether it's alerts or information on what to do, updates on COVID and things like that, like tracking, as Vicki mentioned. So I think that with that understanding that there's a need to enhance our infrastructure on tribal lands with the internet, so to speak. Our tribe has done a good job in terms of putting together hotlines for our youth, hotlines for communities so they can ask questions of COVID, get updates on COVID. We've used the YouTube channel, for instance, to broadcast. But again, that needs an internet connection. So that's #1. I think we need to continue to figure that out and how we financially support our greater internet infrastructure on our reservations. The second point, I think, is I want to share something called the hackathon. So I've been involved with a group of data people who really try to figure out how to bring young people into the data science, data analytics world in terms of not only education, but also in terms of workforce. And so we've put on this global hackathon, COVID global hackathon. And the idea is that we bring together young people in the community with technology people, with data people, and we build an app for the phone so that most of our people have phones. And so we put together a challenge of how that would do. What would that look like? So we bring together all those people, developers, students, the data, and more importantly, the need, the question that we're trying to answer with this technology. And I think that's sort of things I think that we've been promoting. We've been trying to get off the ground, and we're trying to get more people involved in a way to financially support it. So with all that, everything else, the tribe is working hard, to address these things the best way they can. But I think it's going to take a real deep look at where we're at right now as a tribe in terms of our infrastructure, in particular data, because I really think this is going to build for the future and how we build as a nation. So we're always in this nation building mode. We're not there yet, but I think through innovative applications like COVID hackathons and other types of things that bring the data to decision making, that's the things we need to do. So I would welcome this community to get involved with us to help develop solutions for that. So thank you.
Excellent, James. Thank you so much. So Kyle, bring this all together. You talked about droughts, wildfires, COVID impacts. What are some of the positive things that have come out of this, and where do we need to go moving forward?
Well, I have to say that I got to be a fly on the wall on the Geo Hackathon that James was just talking about. And it really was an inspiring group of
Yeah.
people from all over the world who were there to help solve problems that were challenges that were posed by Indigenous communities across around the world. So it was a really great experience. Another one that we've just finished up the first part of is addressing the needs of teachers in the Southwest. You know, both James and Vicky talked about youth and teachers really having to switch to the challenges of distance education and in the Southwest while in the context of both a pandemic and a drought. And so over the last 6 weeks, we've been working with a group of teachers, mainly from the Navajo Nation, who are adapting to distance learning, but still doing place-based education with their students, and working with students towards things like food sovereignty. By connecting students with the landscape, connecting students with their grandparents and with elders, and taking advantage of the fact that a lot of students are now doing school in the context of the home and of their own landscape. So we've been working with teachers about different strategies for reaching students. One of the sets of lesson plans that we've gotten to deploy with these teachers is one that Crow Canyon co-developed with the Hopi Cultural Preservation Office on the Pueblo Farming Project, which really looks at the incredible amount of work and success of Hopi and Pueblo farming, is corn farming, over the last 2 millennia, and the types of strategies, resilient strategies that that Hopi people have developed over that period of time. This is all to say that communities have endured and been resilient through a lot of challenges in the past. Drought being one of them, but pandemics and plagues being others. And so what I'm seeing is a lot of people finding strength in that community resilience. It takes hard work. And it takes people working together and doing the right thing, as Vicky said, doing your job, staying socially distanced, wearing a mask. But people are doing good work.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you to all of our panelists. I look forward to a very engaged discussion with our NCSE participants following this. And please, everybody, stay safe, and we hope for a more resilient 2021 as we move forward. So thanks again for your participation.